We love Lavita. We love her. Love her. Um, Absolutely glorious way to start our morning. Happy Valentine's Day. I love you guys. How is it going? What a beautiful, gorgeous day in Southern California, let me tell you. So it's time for a cup of grata with a shot of expression and two squirts of reality. And I have a seriously cool co-squirt today. Let me tell ya, we're going to be sparking the G vibe and taking it off. That's what we're doing for Valentine's Day. Whoop! Tell you what. So Corey Hilton, get this, as an he's an authenticity coach. Wasn't coming out. Amazon best-selling author, and he helps men over 30 lacking emotional expression to overcome subconscious blocks by utilizing his unique and value-driven perspectives through his journey of self-discovery after dedicating 25 years of his life to being an exotic dancer, which is an extraordinary perspective. We had him on LOA on Friday, and without further ado, I'm going to bring up our wonderful guest. Corey, welcome to Spirituality Gone Wild and Cuppa Grata.
Hey, Debbie, thanks so much for having me on. Don't you worry. I actually trip up with saying authenticity sometimes myself, so don't even sweat that at all. It's a tough one sometimes, especially on a Monday morning on the first cup of coffee. So, but happy Valentine's Day, everybody, and it's a pleasure to be on here. I'm so excited to actually do this interview with you. It was awesome the other day on LOA today, and we only scratched the surface, so feel free to go unscripted or go scripted or however you want to do it. I'm here to entertain and educate and inspire as best as I possibly can. So
cool beanios. Well, let's get the short story out of the way so that we can take a straight up dive into the meat of what you're offering now, because quite honestly, what you're doing now is what I feel we are here to do, and that's help people step into their authentic voice. Really quick, I just want to say a quick good morning to Sam Page. Happy Valentine's Day, Sam. I thought you would have loved La Diva because Sam is, oh my God, he's a maestro. He's a maestro. Good morning, John Theory. Good morning. Good morning. Facebook user, no script for Deb. She's a hip shooter. You know it, John. You know it. I mean, geez.
There you go.
So I'm also going to do a little flip of our screen there because go for it, sweetheart. Tell me all about. I'm because quite frankly, I love that you were an exotic dancer, and I told everybody at LOA on Friday that when I was 18, that's what my friends took me to do, was go to a strip club, you know. And that was my one and only time I ever did that because I was a little frightened. Well, you know, an 18-year-old, I'm rubbing, and they want me to rub oil on this guy's naked ass, and I'm like, no, what? So
my God.
I thought it was hilarious, right?
That's
all right.
Good stuff. That's good stuff. Well, I will kind of mention one thing that you said there, and it's when it comes down to addressing your authenticity, you know, I mean, I guess all I can say is it doesn't really matter when it is in your life. It's just a matter of doing it, because when it comes down to it, that's not something that everybody is just willing to just go ahead and do. It takes being vulnerable. It takes sometimes exposing things, pardon the pun, that you may not want to expose to the rest of the world, really. And it's not saying that you have to tell every little secret that you have in your life, but at the same time, when you actually realize at some point that there's been some struggles that you've had that might be related to straying from your authenticity, it changes the game completely. So for me as a writer, I mean, I'll just let you know, like, I started off with this whole Take It Off project as somebody that really knew nothing. I mean, all I was doing was just documenting a lot of these really crazy stories that I had. And those compiled, obviously, over a quarter century of taking your clothes off across the border between Canada and the US. And I even strayed into Europe for a little while. But all I'm saying is that, I mean, I had a very colorful, different type of lifestyle, somewhat of a free bird lifestyle compared to a lot of people out there. But I just had a lot of relatable struggles, quite frankly, that a lot of guys in particular have, that they can relate to, but just see through a bit of a different lens when it comes to my writing and my coaching. So I guess all I can say, Debbie, is that as I said, when I started off, I was kind of bare bones with this. And then I I teamed up with this amazing company that I published through and learned how to edit through, called Daring to Share Global in Ontario. And through the training of my friend Diana Ryers, I was able to become a far more authentic writer. And it even shows when I look back at my book and I'm looking at even my first couple of chapters compared to the last couple of chapters, I can actually myself personally see how my writing advanced a lot more, because I really started to inject a lot more of those true feelings that were connected to my values into my writing, which painted a far more, I guess you could say, accurate picture of what my past really was and how I can impact other people in my future. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, without getting into the story too
I,
much so far. But yeah,
I love that, and I want to show everybody really quickly. All right, this is Corey's book. It's called Take It Off. I'm going to put the link in the chat.
yeah,
It's also up in the description of this live for those of you that are
awesome.
watching or watching the replay. Just look in the description, you'll find it. But I'll go ahead and put it in
Yeah.
the chat. This is the book, and I'm curious. See, because communication's my thing. All right, here's
Mhm.
I'm like so curious right now.
Sure.
Here's what I'm curious about, because
Yeah.
I just was in gender communications last semester because I'm
Okay.
finishing my communications degree.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we talked a lot about is, um, of course, the empowerment of the feminine, and how women
Mhm.
have always been looked at as sex, or men tend to view women as sex objects, right? But here we are, and the complete flip, and you were the
Mhm.
sex object. You were
Yeah.
objectified. I wanna know what
Mhm.
that felt like for you, and where do you think that came from?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I mean, I guess all I can say is there's a way that you can stereotype either side of the coin. And what I mean by that is, I guess, like, when it comes down to, if you want to stereotype, say, a male dancer and say, okay, well, every single male dancer that's out there is a slut. Every male dancer out there goes around, they can never be faithful to their partner. They must be out there just
Mm,
partying and being crazy all the time. Well, you can stereotype that, but then a male dancer can also stereotype every single woman that's out there in the crowd, and say that they're the same thing. So I was never really in that mindset, to be
oh,
completely
good.
honest.
Okay.
For me, I kind of got into this industry for a different reason than a lot of male dancers would get into it. And I'm not sitting here saying I'm standing on my pedestal by any means saying this. All I'm saying is that I really had a really heavy drive, I guess you could say, from a really early age, to try to extract emotions out of people. So even though you could maybe stereotypically say, yeah, that guy goes out there and does it for the money. Well, yeah, of course I did it for the money to a certain degree. It made me a living from age 17 till 43. Not going to deny that.
I mean, that
But
dude, that's like rock star, though. I mean, 17 to 43, you all get this, right? I mean, like I told you on the podcast, my vibe on that is that there's a lot of women that you made feel wanted that have never felt wanted. And
Oh
and
yeah.
and that's a good thing too. There's a lot of I see it in a lot of different perspectives, but I was
Mhm.
really just curious, did you ever feel like that you were just an object and that kind of thing? That's really what I was looking at, because I was just
Yeah,
curious.
yeah.
If it But no, not really. Okay.
Well, no,
Okay.
I will say to a certain degree, Debbie, I guess, because what I did was is I at certain times, depending on where I was and what the show was, or maybe even individually what who the person was that I was doing a show for. So that all kind of though came down from being hidden behind my alter ego a lot. So all I'm
Mhm.
saying is that when you can present yourself as an entertainer through your alter ego, that's a different person, that guy that's on stage, than the person that's at home, maybe by themselves after the show, or chooses to not be around the crowd. And so for me, like, all I can say is I unknowingly, a lot of times in my personal life and actually in my professional life, took a bit of that alter ego and took part of the egotism with him actually off stage into my personal life, which did not turn out to be such a good option in the end, to be honest, because
Really?
yeah, because I mean, being that I was not really, I was trying to sell something that I wasn't actually at home, which wasn't really that good of a thing,
Oh,
right?
that was
So
real.
yeah, so I'm just saying that, like, it's taken me until now, and I'm 52 years old here in April, but I'm saying that it took me up till turning 50 years old to actually be open enough and vulnerable enough to actually expose my naked truth by putting it on paper. And through that process of putting it on paper was a really healing experience, not just for myself, but for a lot of relationships from my past that, quite frankly, I didn't feel could ever be healed. I was able to do that just simply because I was open enough to addressing my own vulnerability, to actually sit back instead of using the finger all the time and saying everybody else is to blame. I started using the thumb. And that was liberating. Like, that changed everything for me. Like, it
Oh,
really did. It changed everything. So yeah, I mean, really, to get back to your question, really, when it comes down to it, I always segregated it and considered myself an entertainer first and foremost, and didn't really take things personally like that. If it didn't work out, I had shows that bombed and I had shows that hit the moon. They were so unbelievable, right? So they all created memories. There was a mess in my message. It all created a story. And believe it or not, up till a few years ago, I thought that I didn't have any value. What in the world would anybody really care about some guy that took his clothes off, right? Like, that's the way I
oh,
thought.
gee. Well, that's so real right now. And I want to interject really quickly because
Yeah, feel free.
God, you're bringing up so many. There's a message in the mess,
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah, right. But dude,
Yeah.
what is it, man? We hit this. I'm 54, so
Yeah.
like for real though, we hit like 50 or going up into 50, and it was like
Yeah.
that's not it. It's like it's not it. What we're doing is
Yeah.
not it. In fact, I mean, I even stayed single for like almost 4 years. Yeah, 4 years.
Good for
Uh,
you.
well, I didn't really date at all for the better part of 7. Well, yeah, I'm married
Right.
now, so that's a great thing. But I had to be alone to look
Yeah.
inside me and take a dive, like to go
Mm.
swimming inside of my own being to try to deep because I wanted to understand what's happening here. And what I love is your authenticity about how you tried to take part of this archetype of the
Mhm.
dancer and pull it into your relationships, and that wasn't working because it was
Mhm.
not authentic. So I hope
Yeah.
everybody's catching right now that the word of today for Valentine's Day is authentic.
Yeah.
Authentic voice. And let's talk about what is it. Wait, hold on. John Fiore said, good morning, Sandra. Good morning, Luke. I love you guys. Happy Valentine's Day. John says most men are sluts, most of them like a John. He's you got to understand. John Fiore is what he's busting your balls right now.
It's
So just
okay.
know, John, are
It's
you busting
okay.
balls right now? He's busting balls right now. I'm telling you. You got to. I
Yeah.
love you, John. And John's so cute.
No, I mean, you know what? Stereotypically, again, like, if you want to throw it back into caveman days, we are considered the spreader of the seed, so to speak, right? So, I mean, it can be placed that way for sure. I mean, I
Yeah.
just, like I said, I don't take things personally. I have a good chuckle sometimes out of my former career. I can have the biggest laughs about some of my injuries and the things that I had happen to me on the road or whatever it might be. And I can also have some of the biggest laughs about my pain and my struggle and going on the long 8-year Forrest Gump walk, because I did that exact same thing, Debbie. I had to do that detachment, and it took me way too long. And that's the problem for a lot of
Let's
guys is,
talk to me
you
about that detachment. What did that detachment I'm going to make you bigger. What did the detachment what did this detachment look like? Describe it because there's
yeah,
people out there who are not tapping into their soul, man. What did
yeah,
that look
yeah.
like? So let's help some people identify that, and let's talk about what it
Okay.
is on the flip.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm gonna go ahead into my story a little bit here, because this is kind of mid stride. You're talking like about half to three quarters of the way through my book, but and I'll just say it because it was forced detachment. Okay, so I was in my comfort zone to a certain degree, comfortably in there, but at the same time not realizing that I was in the wrong place. So I'm going to backtrack a little bit. What it is I started dancing in Canada. I was in the east or west coast of Canada when my career started. About halfway through my career, ended up in Florida working for the largest beach club in North America at the time, in Panama City Beach. And through that process, I was very irresponsible. Although I was a dancer, I still was a Canadian. I didn't have a social security number, and I was hired on by this company. And of course, we're just getting tips and we're partying and we're having fun all the time. And it's mid-spring break and summer and the mayhem's happening. So it just kind of happened. But my irresponsibility continued on even after I eventually got married. And when I got married, I had a 7-year marriage that actually was, I'd say, well, 8-year marriage, 7 years of bliss and 1 year of hell. And the reason why that last year was hell was really because I, in my own way, kind of mimicked my own parents as far as the way I was brought up. I kind of mimicked them in the way that I presented myself as a husband. I made all the same mistakes because they were the tools that I had been given. Now, have you heard that story before? So many people have done it. But what happened was, although I was actually very faithful to my ex-wife through my entire marriage, and yes, I will agree with your friend that a lot of men are sluts, but for myself, when I got married, actually, I stood by that, and I actually didn't. When I was out on the road and stuff, I didn't stray from it. In fact, I was the guy counting his money back at the hotel room, talking to my wife on the phone. So for me, I took a really heavy pride in staying monogamous, and in the end, actually, after this incident happened, my ex-wife actually was the one to stray on me, but I came to realize that I pushed her in that direction in the first place. It was not 100% her fault. In fact, I was at least 50% responsible for it. Actions are one thing, but my actions before that were a whole other thing. So where I'm going with this is this: fast forward 8 years from the day, or 7 years from the day that I get married, or 7.5 years, whatever it was. I'm trying to get my act together finally after having no social security number for that many years in the US. Yes, I was illegal as all get up down there. So I come back to Canada, I get my driver's license, I get my passport all redone so that I'm actually can go into business with a business partner that was open. He was worth over $43 million. He was ready to start a company with me. It's right before the stock market crash of 2008. And so I'm thinking to myself, yes, I got to get back to Florida, and I've got to get back there, whatever it takes. So I'm pushing to get back. And in the end, what ended up happening was everything failed. I wasn't able to get back. What happened was I was trying to go back to the US with my ex-wife after getting all that stuff reinstated. And long story short, the customs officer at 5 o'clock in the morning scribbled on a piece of paper and said, in the back for fingerprinting. And I was banned from the US for 3 years. So I wasn't able to go back. My ex was able to go back. I lost my house. I lost my car. I lost everything that I owned. I was living out of a bag at 38 years old here in Canada with nobody around. I only had one family member here in town. I had no friends. And I literally had to start over again from scratch with nothing, like
Isn't that
stripped
isn't
down to
isn't it
bone.
freaking fun? Dude, it's so much fun. I've done it too, man.
It
We got to
sucked.
reconstruct. It did not suck. We got to redo
Oh,
it.
it sucked. It sucked so bad because there was so many tears that were shed, and there was so much pain that I went through. I did
Yeah,
that
yeah.
walkabout for ages. I did that walkabout for so
Well, this
long
was
trying to
when
figure
was
it
that?
out.
Was that like 2007 or 8?
It was right around 2008 actually was when the
Yeah,
walkabout started. Yeah,
totally. You know
yeah.
what, dude? Like that first time I lost everything, I didn't feel that way. The second time I did, I was like, "Psh." People on
Yeah,
here have watched me go through a complete and utter transformation just from in the last 4 years. So, in the
right.
last 4 to 5 years. So, I'm really understanding that. I do know the pain that you're talking about right now because in 2008 when that happened for me, I lost my shit and I did
Yeah,
not handle it well. So, I went
yeah.
down a deep, deep dark hole. So, I
Yeah, I
fully
get
get
it.
you. Back then in 2008, that was a pickle. Okay, so you're just homeless, nobody around, you are devastated, you are in a dark hole.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
homeless
yeah.
per se. 'Cause I was living in my aunt's basement, but like basically,
Yeah.
I had to like thank God she was around because I had nothing. Like I was literally nothing, right? So
Yeah.
when I got into that mode, I was thinking about how can I fix this? How can I get back to Florida? And all the resistance was pushing me away from there and saying, no, you don't need to be here from multiple angles. And I'm the type, as a disciplined former bodybuilder, that I push towards resistance. I don't run away from it. I go right into it. So I just kept on trying, and I just kept getting smacked in the head saying, no, Corey, you don't need to be back here. And it was actually, oddly enough, a blessing in disguise because, of course, the stock market crash happened, and I was forced to go into a completely different industry that I was unfamiliar with. Never did sales. I wasn't the type to really do sales, and I ended up going into that industry for quite a few years after this whole thing happened. But all I'm saying is I was still even being a dancer at the same time afterwards. I was kind of just still kind of doing it on the side sort of thing while trying to work corporate, and that was still fun for my last few years. But at that time, really, the lights had gone down on the heyday of my industry because I had so many big successes as a dancer in Canada and the US before that
Mhm.
it just wasn't the same, right? And I didn't want to be that guy that shouldn't be out there on stage anymore. It was just something that I never desired to be. I wanted to kind of leave on a good note. And so, because when I first started dancing, one of the first people I ever saw out there actually taking all his clothes off, I thought to myself, I never want to be that guy. I just don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
be him. I really didn't.
Right.
And in the end, I just realized when I kind of was, I was like, okay, I've got to get out of this industry altogether. But yeah, I mean, just to say that the detachment thing is actually literally one of my core values now, because it actually allowed me to look so deeply into myself that I could actually empathize with other people. I could actually try to understand other people instead of just seeing everything through my own lens. Because unfortunately I was being inauthentic, seeing everything through my own lens, trying to sell something that I wasn't, pushing off blame game, blah, 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 blah. And when I was able to actually kind of do that, it changed everything. It just changed I attracted better people into my life. I
That's
lost
right.
people that weren't good in my life, that weren't influencing me the right direction. And I'm not saying influencing, but just more so that environment you're around, right? The negative self-talk, and that even also with that negative self-talk expands the inner critic in yourself. So you're waking up some
Hey.
days and going, oh fuck, pardon my French, but
Yeah, yeah.
you
No,
know,
yeah.
you're
I thought that
just
was I
like,
thought that was Spanish.
there you go. But actually, that's a funny story, because I do have a story from Spain that's in my book about making a mistake saying something one time, and it brought the whole house down. We were all laughing
Okay.
about it, but that's in
I
the book. That's a horror
Oh
story.
no, like I totally want to. In fact, we're gonna talk about that book here. I'm gonna put the. I'm gonna put. This is great. I'm gonna put into the chat. I'm putting the web address for Corey, so you guys can go and. Oh, now I've got here. Hold on a second. So right here is the book, and it's called Take It
Yeah,
Off, and it's really it's from everything that I've researched so far, it looks like it's going to be a quite compelling and entertaining story with a twist of some tools and whatnot that you might be able to use to step in further into your authentic voice. You know what's interesting? I looked over. I was on your website. In fact, I'm on your website
cool.
right now. And if y'all want to go, you want to see what Corey, great shots, dude. Like there's some really good ones. I could actually share the screen. Y'all want to see what we're talking about? I can just show you.
You're gonna expose me, Debbie?
I'm exposing. I am going. Well, you put it on your website. You're asking
I'm
for
not
it.
complaining. I've
I'm
exposed
telling
myself
you.
to half of the world. I don't even care. It doesn't bother me in the slightest.
I was kind of thinking probably not at all because hey, okay, so did it come up?
Yeah, you
Okay,
got you
so
got the gallery up there. You can kind of
all
see it.
right. We have the gallery. So here we go. So these are the days. Oh, that one's really cute. What is These are great. I mean,
Yeah,
seriously.
that's
Look
funny.
at
That's me doing with my buddy Bobby, actually back in the day, doing the Pinocchio act, being the fairy godmother for his Pinocchio routine, which was so
right
funny.
here.
It was one of the most classic acts. It was just so funny. And as you can tell, that's old school pictures too. Like that's the actual like pictures you'd actually have
Yeah.
developed, so
Right,
yeah,
right.
it's just funny, right? Like I haven't even put the title in there yet, but it's just funny because I wanted to throw a few of those pictures up just to kind of show that yes, I actually was a dancer.
You know what? Oh
But
my God, that's fine. This is great though. I mean, and one of the things that I wanted to mention about your book and what I really like is the cover. And the reason
thanks.
that one's too cute. Oh my God.
That
She,
actually, that right there is actually my ex-roommate, believe it or not, who was one of my best friends at the time. So although that looks like a hardcore, like crazy ladies' night picture, we were like brother and sister, believe it or not. She was just loving it. I think I was on my birthday or something too.
I
So
just think it's awesome, period. I mean, I don't even
yeah.
know. I think it's fun. And I love that you're here to share this story because,
Oh man.
wh- come on. Like, there's there is a lot to be said for sticking with something for 25 years, number one. And
Man.
so you're the comeback kid. You've turned this around. What you got
Yeah.
back into corporate, you got the corporate world, went into sales. You went back into stripping though, didn't you? For a minute?
Yeah, no, I actually, like, oddly enough, I kind of went back and forth between it at times, and I kept getting drawn back in like a magnet. But let me just backtrack just for a quick second though, because you were talking about the cover and stuff, and I just wanted to
Oh
let
yeah.
you know a little bit more of the representation of that. It's not
Oh
just
yeah,
to
I
try
forgot
to
about
get
that.
an attraction. It is an original cover, but actually the reason why have half my face covered, and you'll notice it's actually the same charm that's hanging around my neck. So what it is of course it's my true self, and my alter ego hiding behind that theater mask. Now the theater mask actually has some really mad significance. At my heyday of my career, right when things were really peaking in Florida, that was something, that actual charm was one of 11 that were ever made. And the original group that I was one of the guys that replaced the original
Mhm.
group that was the #1 male dance review in all of North America at the time. And there was 10 of those guys. And then the 11th charm was held by one of the, I guess you could say, entertainment coordinators that was really close to them. And her name was Denise. And she was like really close, really good friends. They all worked with her for years. And in that year in 1996, they turned around. She said she made a commitment. She said out of the 10 new guys in the new group that were coming in, she was going to, at the end of the summer, pick the one that actually was the closest to what resembled the former group and that she connected with the most. So at like 2 o'clock in the morning one night at the end of the summer in 96, me and her were out on the dance floor, and we'd been ripping it up. We've been having a really good time. And all of a sudden she told me the story, and she grabbed her charm off of her neck and handed it to me. And she said, "This is for you because you're the one." And it made me realize that was like a really significant moment of acceptance. And it wasn't just acceptance of myself, but it was acceptance from somebody that really meant something to me. So it was almost like a pivotal moment. But also at the same time, it was in a world that I'd never experienced before, because it was a world of partying and craziness that I just didn't experience in Canada. So I was in this new world and got accepted by somebody that meant that much. So that's why that's actually on the cover. It was kind of the turning point. And it made me, although it was acceptance for different reasoning than a lot of people
Mhm.
would, it was just really important to me at that time. So that's kind of the whole
I
alter
love
ego acceptance.
Well, I love how you melded it together. And the fact of the matter is that we are here to love our shadow. We are here to love all of that we have tried to snuff down and hide. You know,
Yeah.
it's so liberating to me, for me to know that I can be an asshole and to own it.
Yeah. I
I mean,
mean,
look, I have moments. I have moments. I have my moments, but I can own it now,
yeah.
and that's the difference. And I love that you've actually put it into a book where people are going to, you speak to men a lot. And
Yes.
and and I think that this is, God, I can't even tell you how important this is. Okay, look, the
Hmm.
divine feminine and the divine masculine are having a bit of of a tug
Power
of war
struggle.
here.
That's
Oh
right.
my God. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
because we're in the 1,000 years of the divine feminine now. So
Yeah.
we took back our power. We are the
Correct.
queens, right? Just
Mm.
saying.
Yeah.
Well, men, but really it's about men tapping into their heart
Yeah.
is what we're looking for that heart conscious space in which to live from. And
Hmm.
men were not taught, they were taught the opposite of this. Be rough, be this, be that,
Caveman hunter
and
gatherer.
yeah, exactly. You know, m- make a baby, populate the planet.
Spread the
Be in
seed.
a we may come from Neanderthals, gentlemen, but y'all not still a freaking Neanderthal, and it's not working. So
Yeah.
men
I got that
tapping into their
t-shirt.
soul.
I
Yeah,
literally
right.
fell on my face so many times with getting that t-shirt. It's funny. And when I look back at my former self, I want to slap myself a little bit. That's why I speak to the man that's just so, men over 30 that struggle with lack and disconnection with their partners, and, basically unworthiness. I mean, it all comes into play just in a different way with me. I just struggle with it
Mhm.
through a different light. That's all it is, right? So a lot of guys deal with this stuff. There's a reason why 3 or 4, suicides in
Keep
Canada are men right
just
now.
keep talking. Keep
There
talking.
is.
Be right.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no worries. But I mean, what I will say towards that is just that when I decided to create this project, it wasn't just about, I mean, take it off as a metaphor. So it's not just about taking my clothes off for a living, but it's actually taking off the layers that were embedded into me from an early age. So when it comes down to that disconnection or not being able to communicate emotions, which is very typical for a lot of guys, for me, that was kind of on steroids in a lot of ways. Like that was a lot bigger of a deal for me because of my upbringing, and quite frankly,
Yeah.
my upbringing was, I was raised by my grandparents. This is a little different than a lot of people. I mean, in the 70s there was a lot of that stuff going on, and I was no different. I just was raised by a family that loved me and cared about me deeply.
Yeah.
They just only had the tools that they had, and I'm not
That's
saying
all
that
they had.
Yeah, and we didn't have any instruction manual or any of that, right? So for me, I realized later in life, and it took a long time to figure this out, but I put my own father on a pedestal so much as Superman, and thinking that he was so perfect in so many ways, that I was always just really trying to get him to be proud of me however I possibly could. And he did support me in so many ways. He truly did, Debbie. I mean, he made a mad difference in my life. I wouldn't be the person I am without him. But on the other side, I also wouldn't have been the person that struggled without him either. Because, like, when it came down to that, his emotional disconnection was hardwired into him. Military, he was drafted in the military going into World War II. So he passed away at 97 years old a couple of years ago. And really, not only just wired like that, but also wired like that through living and surviving through the depression, and having suicide in his family background that was very close, and just having a lot
Mm.
of hardship that a lot of us will never understand. But guess what? Even though we don't understand that, somebody that experienced that kind of big T trauma a long time ago can really pass that down through generations of a family without even knowing or even meaning to. And so he passed a lot of that stuff down and bottled up a lot of those emotions. And by bottling up that, allowed that arc of intensity to build up and build up and build up inside of him, until something would spew out of his mouth that was totally inauthentic, and he would actually have to kind of backtrack and be like all guilty and feeling bad about what he said. So I always say, one of my key taglines is in my very last chapter of my book, and I express this to the guys out there, because really, I'm not here to say that you can call a man by the hunter gatherer stuff, or whether they're a hunter or a fisherman or whatever. You can call not allowing them to cry, or playing the Tom Cruise Top Gun role. But to me, it's let the dam break before you damn break. Like, cry it out. Don't worry about it. If you got to shed the tears, shed the bloody tears. Go into another room and do it if you got to, but do it. Because otherwise you're just going to continue to bottle it up. Or when you get that arc of intensity where you're getting triggered, I mean, this is part of my training, but rein it back in. Take those couple breaths. If you got to go out and take a walk somewhere, whatever you have to do it, do it, and get it out of you. And then realize what it is that's triggering you and why it's triggering you. It might not even be the person that's in front of you. It could be something that was bothering you from 5 years ago that you need to really step back before you open your yap.
Oh my
So
god, well, I'm really loving this, and I agree 100%. I gotta
yeah, I
tell
mean,
you. Okay, so I want to say let's jump over to the audience just because they've been happy Valentine's Day, Ava and Sandra. This is great. Today is their 37th anniversary. I love
oh
that. They have a
wow.
remarkable show called Twin Flames. It's a great podcast. I absolutely love that. And I always get these goodie bags after I do them, and they're great. And it's this amazing Alpine made soap. And as a matter of fact, there's this spray. I'm not doing a plug right now, I swear. I
I
am
just
in
love
love
it.
with this organic spray. It's frankincense. It's called
Oh, I can smell
cleansing.
it from here. I can smell it from here.
Seriously, it's oh no, it's not. And then David Strickle, who you'll find out about with Thai Boot Camp. David, he got one too, and he's like, "Oh my god, this soap." I know, it's crazy. Anyway, we love you
So
guys, and
awesome.
Ava, hello, and John. He shifted. Johnny shifted it to let me shift my
Disguise
statement.
slut.
I'm a disguised slut. Hi Nicole. It's a happy Valentine's Day, and Luke. Luke is just loving it. He's just all about it. And John was saying that Spirit showed you a new direction, and I love that.
Oh man, did it ever? Yeah,
That's
yeah.
that. This is ironic. So Nicole
Oh wow,
in
you were
live.
in Canada for 12 years. Wow,
Oh, Nicole is awesome. She also
that's
has a
cool.
show here on Spirituality Gone Wild too. So,
Yeah. Kudos
but
to you, Nicole. If you did 12 years of dancing in Canada, you were definitely a hustler and you were a survivor, because there's a big difference between male dancers and female dancers. And I will say this. I actually really admire a lot of female dancers, because I look at it like, I have to, well, I'm one guy that has to take off my gear and basically have girls yell and scream, take it off or whatever, right? But for the women, it's a different deal, because you're dealing with the male mentality, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not so good, and that just comes with the territory with anything. But I think it's a little more dramatic with men. I think there's a little
yeah,
higher expectation with that perfectionism stuff, and there's a bigger chance of rejection if you're not necessarily performing or doing what they want you to do. And so like, whereas when I would see guys that would take off their clothes for women in my review and stuff, and just being honest about it, sometimes we're rookies or not even really at the caliber of some of the other dancers, and women would still accept them and be like, woohoo, they'd be totally into it
Oh,
just to support it.
I got you.
Right? Whereas guys
That's
are just so
interesting.
critical. They're just so critical. It's just like,
Oh,
oh
the
yeah,
freaking
she's hanging. This is
yeah.
not good.
Oh, you know what?
Right away.
We just watched Shallow Hal last night. It's an old movie.
Great movie.
Do you remember that shit?
No, it's so good.
Oh my God,
Such
it
a good
was.
movie.
So you're just making me think of Shallow Hal. We just watched it
Yeah.
because it is. Yeah, I agree that had to have been, um, that had to have been something. So okay,
Yeah.
so we're gonna go back now here to one more plug for your book, y'all. I put this is in the chat. You can scroll up, and you want to do that so that you can buy this.
Yeah,
Okay.
and can I mention something? I just want to let people know too. Like I made something here that's a little original, and the reason why I say it's I took another 10 years after I wrote these stories before I released this book. And the stories were one thing. I had so many people saying, Corey, you should write a book. That story was amazing. You should, you should. And I shitted on myself for a long time. And then finally I decided to do it. But the thing is when I finished it, I was like, oh my God, this is so not enough. Like, and because what I found was when I went through this introspective phase and when I went through this detachment phase, I really, really realized that I can make a far bigger impact than just telling a bunch of stories about my past. Like, and then what it came down to was I was able to attach my value and my struggle at the top of every chapter. So just as an example, my first chapter is called Goodbye Caterpillar, Hello Butterfly. But the first chapter is my struggle between my core value of truth and the perception that I actually had, which was the struggle with my truth. And that created a sense of fear in my life that I carried from most of my adult life of heights. So that's just one example. And then I basically tell the story of how that happened. And then at the end of the chapter, I actually call it my naked truth. And it's at the end of every single chapter. It's my unhazed, accountable, like not drug headed, not my head not filled with drugs, not like
Yeah.
just, I'm saying like just right
Yeah.
straight up, like 50-year-old self looking back and going, hey man, that was something that you did, or you didn't even intend to be inauthentic at 5 years old, but you actually were. And that's why you struggled with these things. And this is what I try
Yeah.
to do, is get my students to actually cross-reference with my book, believe it or not, and go through my workbook and say, okay, yeah, I wasn't Corey. I wasn't out here doing this crazy stuff, but I do relate to the struggle that he went through. And maybe I went through something similar, and I get them to reflect on that and then just understand the emotional feeling that was connected to that. Because that really, to me, is the core behind actually being able to live by your most authentic self, in my eyes anyways. Is just my perspective. I'm not here to regurgitate the same stuff that everybody else does out there in self-care world, but in my eyes, just through the way that I was able to do this, I felt that by aligning with those, not just the values are one thing. Everybody has a different set of them. That's obvious. Mine are, I literally have them written out in front of me, but all I do is I I have a different set of feelings. You could have the
Oh,
exact same core
I want to
values, but
go.
I have a different set of feelings.
I love that, but I want to jump in here because I want you to go over your values. Because
Yeah,
here's why, Corey,
yeah,
because this is my favorite work.
I love it.
Compassionate communicating, all of this is my favorite stuff. So
Yeah,
the reason is because that a lot of people don't understand what a value is. They've never even
yeah,
been exposed to this. I
yeah.
and I say that because I didn't know. I didn't know what my need, what my
Same.
values, what are they
Yep,
talking about? So
same.
yeah, it was big. So why don't you share what some of your top values are?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna describe kind of how I was trained on this, and then I'll go into that for sure. It won't take long. All I did was I had a set of words that were basically presented to me by my company, and I did check marks beside the ones that resonated with me. They just stood out the most. And then I took my 8 top ones that I had check marks beside, and I wrote those ones down. And then from there, all I really did was I sat back and really thought about it. When I'm in line with those values, the most I'm in line with them, what feeling do I have that represents those, right? So it's always good to really be aware of how in line you are by the way that you feel on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. That's how I keep myself literally in check. And it's never going to actually be perfect. You're never going to be a 10 on all of them. It just doesn't work that way. But it's good to be aware of them so that you can actually know when you're straying from them. So my values that I actually, and these change, they really do. Like, they don't necessarily stay static, but mine are really straight up truth, integrity, unity, protection, relationships, creativity, leadership, and detachment. Okay, so when I think about integrity, for me, integrity is literally like, it's like the derivative of self-worth for me in a lot of ways. It's basically, when I'm integral, I feel what I'm really confident in what I'm actually saying, because I'm actually saying my truth, or I'm aligned with basically my real truth. And as hard as it is to be that way sometimes, it's caused some butterfly effect moments for me. By staying in that, I still feel more worthy when I'm integral, is all I'm trying to say. So that, and then when it comes down to unity as an example, I feel at ease when I have unity around me. When I have people around me that are united, I feel my life feels more at ease. That's all it is, really. And then protection is a feeling of safety. Relationships, a feeling of connection. Creativity is a feeling of excitement. So if I lose my creativity, which I did at one point in my life, I lost that feeling of excitement. Well, guess what happened? I started off as excited and creative in my marriage, but then when I started to lose that, I lost that part of me. And then that part of
Yep.
me got lost in my relationship, and she fell out of love with me, and I fell out of love with me. And so
Yep.
what that ended up being was a degradation of that value, which was literally like lighting the freaking match and firing up the wick and blowing the whole thing up for me, because it was that important of a core value, right? So when I think about leadership, satisfaction is the feeling I have behind being a good leader. And detachment is empathy. It makes me feel empathetic for others when I'm able to actually understand, not necessarily agree, because you're not going to agree with everybody, but at least respect that other person's perspective by trying to understand, whether it's ideology that you don't agree with, or if it's whatever it might be. I'm not here to serve the whole world and have everybody agree with me. But at the same time, if I do understand them, then I can respect their perspective, and vice versa, which is just as important in my eyes, and move on to what we can talk about that
Yeah,
we do
and
agree on.
I love that. And what I love about that is that if we use the tool of curiosity always to be curious, to want to
Mm-hmm.
understand, empathy in my world is the ability to tap into another human exactly and imagine
Mm-hmm.
what could they possibly be going through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When I don't have anything to compare it to, like someone losing their child, that's not something I've had a lot in my life,
Sure.
but I don't have that. Thank you, God. Thank you,
Right.
Source. Thank you, Universe.
Right.
Um, there is this need for us to want to understand others. Empathy, practiced empathy, is deeper than just imagining what could be going on through our filter, but
Mm-hmm.
rather seeking to understand what's going on from another one's perspective. And actually, what I heard you say was then accepting that, appreciating that, under, we seek to understand so that we acknowledge that we,
Yeah.
yeah, we recognize that that person has this need and or whatever. There isn't a judgment here. It is simply it is. And is it okay that we just accept people in their reality because that's what their reality? You better darn well believe it. What else are we going to do? So I love how that you were breaking that down. How
I
did
honestly, I just think it's
but
so
how
vital right now. I think
yeah.
now more than ever, it's so vital. We're so black and white as a society. It's just like, whether you're jumping on your phone or whether you're talking to someone even face to face these days, it's just like, I'm right, you're wrong. Whoa, 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 back up just a little bit. Like, we don't have to always be so dead set on that. Like, go into the gray a little bit. Yeah. You don't necessarily have to agree, but at least try to understand. Like, and when I see trolls on the internet or something, I think to myself, you're ridiculous. You're not getting to the root. You're not actually, like, you're just trying to stir people up. Like, if I've addressed trolls before and had direct messages with them and sat there and said, look, can I talk like off stage here a little bit? Just like, save face and let's get down to it, because I think you're actually a pretty good person. We just kind of disagree on this. Can I kind of just try to get in your head and try to understand what you're at, why you feel the way you do? Like, I'm not trying to change it. I just want to know. And I get a lot further with that than just being all confrontational and, oh, my way is the highway, you know?
And I love that. I'm not sure I would do it with a troll, honestly. So I got to give you some kudos, but
I
I
went
do.
there.
However, what this is really about is when you see anger, are you willing to meet the person where they're at in their anger and then look to seek to understand them further? This is Marshall Rosenberg stuff with nonviolent communication.
Yeah.
Exactly, because he would get slammed by people.
Yeah.
You're this, you're that, you're this, you're that, and I'm not going to repeat the words.
Sure.
They were all terrible slang words that we don't call each other. You
Right.
know, and what he simply said was, "I really want to hear you, but I can't hear you at that volume.
Yeah. Like,
Do you
why
think
is
you
that
could
there?
yeah, do you think you could, quiet down?" And then he proceeded to be curious, and he proceeded to be empathetic and understanding, and the person that he was in a foreign country when this happened, and
Mhm.
when this unfolded, the beauty in it is that this gentleman who was a heckler in the
Mhm.
audience, wound up being one of his top leaders in nonviolent communication ever. So,
Yeah.
the fact is that when we show up for each other, because that's also what I heard you say,
Mhm.
even if it's a
Mhm.
troll,
Yeah.
um, that right there is showing humanity. So you are being the change by showing up as that you seek in your life, and I love
That's
that. So
that's the
I
biggest
love
thing
that.
in my eyes right now to change the world. Like, in a lot of ways. Like, I mean, if I'm gonna do my little incremental stuff to do that, that's the best way that I can personally do it right now. Because like I say, like, I mean, I've actually literally had like no, almost borderline like fights with people in my past, like just verbal, just and it didn't get us anywhere. It really didn't. But when I was able to actually get down to that root, I could really respect their perception, because their life was just through a different lens than mine was. They were brought up in a different area, they had a different upbringing, whatever it might be. Even if I think that it's completely false, at least if they can voice that out and say, this is why I feel the way that I do, then I can go, okay,
Mhm.
well, now I
Mhm.
understand. I don't, and then
Totally.
so yeah,
I
it's
I
just a bit.
I love this.
I think you're right on the worldly thing though. Is like when you actually start experiencing other cultures. Like, I went to Asia a couple of years ago, and just saw how people were there, and people that didn't have a lot of money, but they were probably the most happiest people I've ever met in my life.
That's
Why is
awesome.
that, right? Like, why is it that the person that's frying up chicken skewers and selling little bottles of gasoline on the side of a road on an island somewhere with their little kids running around and half their mouth with teeth falling out, why are they so happy, yet I'm sitting there going on to the internet at the exact same time when I could get a Wi-Fi connect, and actually seeing that people are at the exact same time hoarding toilet paper because of the pandemic, and I'm sitting there looking at this complete and total like opposite of society where you got one that's being greedy and saying I need to hoard all this, and you got this other one that doesn't care at all about hoarding anything and is just living life. It was a wake-up call for me. I just sat there and went, yeah, who's got it better, really? You
Well,
know?
I'm really loving that because what you've done is you've given us a clear distinction, observation of both.
Yeah,
My answer is they live in a deeper state of appreciation, caring, and community. I believe
100%.
that that is the answer. I know from where I was, just a short time ago, that my appreciation factor has changed. Like my meter now is all the way. I love my cup. I really love this cup. Like I
Cheers
love
to that.
it's. I'm not attached to this cup. If something happens, but I do love that. I'm not attached to this thing that I love or any human that I love, but I love them deeply, and it's changed my capacity to to understand love and to understand. But really, what it comes down to is we understand ourselves, then we can
Yeah,
show up for the world, and I appreciate that about our journey on this planet. Now, I want to
yeah.
say a great good morning to Kirk near me. Hey, Kirk, what's up?
Hey, Kirk. Nice to
Kirk,
meet you.
what a such a he's so cool. He's so fabulous. I love him. He motivates me to get off my butt. Um, Seriously. And for
Copy
everybody
motivates
else,
me.
seriously, for everybody who's tuning in right now or on the replay, I thank you so much. We are here talking with the wonderful Corey Hilton, and his book is available. You guys can go and get it. I'll put it back in the chat. Oops, a daisy. And this is the book right here, so everybody can get their hands on it. To
It's a
and
fun
men,
ride.
well, what I love about it is that I think that any man who's willing to come out and speak a truth that is vulnerable and authentic, that is
Mm.
very hard to do. Men have a harder time with this than women do, for sure.
You want to
And
know what the hardest one was for me, Debbie?
I so do. Yes.
I'll
What?
tell you what the hardest one was out of
What?
all of my past, my entire being vulnerable and just even above and beyond a skeleton that I let out of my closet that my ex-wife didn't even know about. The hardest one for me, bar none, was actually admitting and being open and accepting to the fact that I was borderline misogynistic with my ex-wife and I was actually being completely controlling over her. Even if she had wanted that control and she needed that control at that time, to admit that as a guy that you literally said, I'm taking you over in a lot of ways and you're living your life through my body, and now you're going to be the one that's basically sitting there at home, and I'm coming home and going, hi honey, Ricky and Lucy, hi honey, I'm home, is the dinner ready yet, in 2000, like just admitting that.
Uh,
And it's not something that I'm proud of. Like, I'm really not in this state of mind. Like, I'm not really proud of that. But all I did, guys, truthfully, was I just was living my life through the tools that I was taught by my grandfather. And I literally took like a generation from that long ago and injected it into the year 2000 and tried to live that as a guy that took his clothes off for a living and went out there and made his wife feel really comfortable about that as well, I might add. She loved me as a dancer. She didn't have any problem with that side of me at all. A lot of people think, oh God, it would be the worst. She loved it. She thought it was great because I made her feel that good, and she really justifiably could because I didn't screw around on her. But the thing is like, all I'm saying is I took that mentality and it was literally like a bomb ready to blow up. It was only a matter of time because I was restricting that person from growing so much. And she accepted it. Like, she wanted that. But at the same time, like, I restricted her from growing and I started growing in a different direction, in a different way. And it just, those ties that bind started pulling further and further and further apart. And no matter how much I tried to squeeze it to hold it together, it just started slipping through my fingers more and more because I was squeezing tighter. And that was the worst thing I could have done in the end. And that's what I'm saying is this is why I went through this long Forrest Gump walk going, oh my God, you had something really good here. And yes, it fell out and it didn't work out the way that you wanted it to. But the thing is that until you're willing to address your own side of that and go, yeah, I did that and I did control that person, then you can't move on for the next person. Or even for that matter, when I went to therapy the few times that I did, if I was going to try to get back together with my ex-wife, at the time I was kind of trying to, even though I knew that it was blown right up out of, it was done, but
mhm.
I was still in that mindset. I had to make myself better and start understanding myself better before I was ever going to have any type of better consciousness in my relationship. So I couldn't do that at the time. I was just a mess at that time. But now that I've taken that time to be an introspective person and look deeply into it and being honest and willing to go there, now that's a game changer for my next relationship. That'll help me hit the next level, that higher state of consciousness, and understand that other person's values and emotional connections that are attached to that, so that we can be a true team instead of looking up or looking down at that person. And that's been my struggle all my life, is I've been on that power struggle of looking up at that pedestal or looking down at that pedestal. And the only way that, in my eyes, that I can truly look somebody in the eye is to have that understanding of those emotional feelings that are connected to their values, and also understand what the word is that represents those emotional feelings. For me, that inner purpose feeling is harmony. When everything is in line, I'm harmonious. That's the way that I feel. That's just my personal one. But it's just like that love language thing, Debbie. I'm sure you've heard it a million times. there's 5 different love languages or however many. If you don't understand what the other person's love language is, then how can you really give them the love that they
How can
want?
you make well, communication and relationship and is huge, and it really involves in this is my favorite topic because it really involves seeking understanding. Period.
Yeah,
It really involves being willing to connect through your heart space and share openly in a safe container what's really going on.
yeah,
I want to say
100%.
so Kirk says all men need
Thanks,
men
Kurt.
like Corey in their lives. Kirk,
Appreciate
that
that,
was
bro.
super sweet, and of course, my
That's
sweet my my Prince Easton. I love you. That's why you love the Palm Springs. Yes, that's why I love you. You are a hoochie. I tell you, Fleety. He is the Prince
no,
of Palm Springs and one
but
of the most extraordinary performer.
I thank you, Kirk, for saying that, because the reason why I thank you so much for saying that is because that is literally my mission. And I mean that from my heart. Like, yeah, I want to sell books. I'm not going to deny that. I want to sell books. But at the same time, like when it comes down to making that impact, I was somebody that was on the ledge at 38 years old. Like, I was literally, if I had a razor blade in my hand the night that I'm talking about, I would not be here right now, because like I was that messed up in my own head.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful, so thankful that I didn't. But what all I'm trying to say is that like that I want to really help out other guys not to go through that pain. Like, you're going to go through the pain of grieving. You're going to go through all that. You're only human, right? Like that's natural. But at the same time, like I just extended it out way too long, and I've figured it out why, just by doing a lot of deep diving into myself and understanding why I had this sense of abandonment, for example. Like, why every time I had a relationship that fell apart, I felt so distraught over it. Like, why was I that emotional over it, whereas other people wouldn't be? So I had to kind of just figure
Uh,
all those things out. But that took taking time away and just being with me, straying, like not being in a relationship. I was blessed to be able to like put my career and everything on hold completely and just
yeah.
dive in and start writing, right? And we all know you journal, it helps with all that stuff. But when you go that deep in for that long, you can't help but coming out the other side a little different, right? So that's where I'm proud of this work in a way that I've never really been. I'm more proud of this than anything I ever did with my former career, to be
I think it's
completely straight.
well. This is the passion of life,
Yeah.
and I love this. The power of your heart is tangible.
Uh,
Totally.
yeah,
I love
definitely.
that. I love that, Kirk.
I feel it, like I feel the love, because it's just something that I guess like to me, I've never really made an impact outside of what I did. And so it was always such a perfectionism game and a comparison game for me for so many years of my life. And it's just so different now to not be hiding behind that, to
Right.
not be to be in a position where I'm okay with being imperfectly perfect. I'm okay with the progression of doing things instead of just comparing myself to others. And it's such a slippery slope to start with. We all know that. But for me, I was just like, it was just part of my life for so many years that was a hard thing to detach from. But doing that actually has been really liberating, and it's really made me feel a lot better about the person I look at in the mirror, right? So I still believe highly in that higher state of consciousness, and I still believe deeply in my faith. And I'm not talking about organized religion faith. I'm talking about faith, just in me as a person, and what I have the ability to do to help others out in this world outside of just my own circle. Like, and that's where I'm really driven now. And I'm a little different than maybe some speakers out there. I'll admit to the fact that I'm not really necessarily aligned with any particular religion. I just have a deep faith in what I'm doing and to be able to help others in this life. And that's just a spiritual thing. It doesn't have to be written out of a book to me, right? But that's just
Nope.
me, right? Like, I'm not saying, respect my perspective is all I'm saying with that a little
Oh,
bit,
well, I think what's exciting is that, the information that comes forward is all pretty much the same information.
It
It's
is.
just put differently. So,
Yeah.
what I will encourage everybody to do is to grab Corey's book, take it off, get a different perspective of get a different perspective. It's a unique perspective, and quite honest, it sounds extremely interesting. So if you're nosy like I am, you probably want to get the book. So it's been a wonderful hour with you. I thank you
Yeah.
tremendously for being here. Is there anything you want to
Oh,
leave everybody with?
yeah, like I said, when it comes down to that tagline, let the dam break before you damn break, guys. I mean, all that emotional bottled up energy is not going to do anything good for you or the people in your environment. You have people relying on you, and I never really thought about it that way. I just always thought about it like, oh, it's my life, I'm doing what I'm doing, and let the chips
Mhm.
fall where they may. But you have kids, you have a wife, you have all these things that are pressure right now, especially in society right now, the way that it all is, the cookies crumbled in this last couple of years. Take that step back. Don't be so bloody hard on yourself. You don't have the whole world leaning on you to make this happen. If it falls apart for you, you got people around you that are there to help you kind of get back up, right? And understand that you don't have to do it all on your own. Let the dam break before you damn break. I keep saying that. It's just true. And to me, I really just feel like, a lot of those things that I struggled with, the pitfalls, the things that most people can relate to, you can be entertained, inspired, and educated by the struggles that I went through. Don't go into the mess that I went into, but understand the message in my mess, and just know that this book isn't really necessarily written from an ego standpoint. It's more like, hey, you want to understand what man enough's all about? Go back and read, look through these chapters, see where I made all these bloody mistakes, and then reevaluate what man enough's really all about when you finish it, and see if you're honestly willing to take it off too. That's what I'm saying. Are you willing?
Are you willing to take it off? Okay, mask off, guys, masks off, I'm all about it. Mask off. It is real authentic and raw is what I'm all about. So bring it
What are you
on.
talking about?
So Luke says, lovely show. Thank you so much. You are very welcome, my love. I love you. Happy Valentine's Day. And my husband
Happy
says, good
Valentine's.
show.
Oh,
And happy Valentine's Day to my hubby. This is cool. We're starting off Valentine's Day with really good messages about your authentic truth. If you are just joining us or you're just for some reason right here, right now, go back to the beginning and watch the beginning. You know what I mean? I we will see Claudia. Moon Astrologer is coming on in a little bit less than an hour, and I will see you all tomorrow morning with Neo Positivity. Who are you grateful for today? That's really the biggest thing you need to be looking at. Start with yourself and a cup of grata. I love you guys, and bye.